6 skin tents on the shore of a frozen lake, a pot of stew still hanging over a dead fire, a child's sealskin shirt half mended, the needle still stuck in the seam, and not a single person, not one body, not one footprint in the snow. A fur trapper claims he reached an Inuit village he knew well and found it empty. 25 men, women, and children simply gone. The question that's going to haunt you for the next few minutes is this: what in God's name happened to the people of Lake Anjikuni? And wait, because the most disturbing part isn't the empty village. The most disturbing part is what they say was in the graveyard. Let's go to the beginning. On a cold day in November 1930, the Canadian fur trapper Joe Labelle was traveling near Lake Anjikuni in Canada's Northwest Territories, today part of the modern territory of Nunavut. To give you a sense of the place, Anjikuni is a remote body of water in the Kivalik region on the Kazan River, roughly 600 kilometers northwest of Hudson Bay. A place where winter buries everything in ice for half the year. According to the story, Labelle wasn't arriving somewhere strange. He was arriving at the home of friends. He entered the village looking for shelter after hearing of a nearby Inuit settlement and found it completely deserted. At first, he thought they were out hunting. He shouted a greeting from the shore. Silence. He approached the tents one by one. And that's where the scene starts to stop making sense. Because people fleeing danger take the essentials. These people took nothing. Labelle reported finding, right on the shore, a completely abandoned Inuit village. Pots still sitting over the cooking fires, sled dogs starved to death tied to their leashes, rifles left standing upright inside the tents. Think about that for a second. In the Arctic, in 1930, a rifle is your life. Sled dogs are your only transport. Nobody, absolutely nobody, willingly abandons their weapons and their dogs in the dead of a polar winter. And yet, there they were, the rifles standing, the dogs dead where they'd been tied, and we still haven't reached the part that turns your blood cold. Because when Labelle searched the area around the village, they say he found something worse than the empty tents. Something in the ground. I'll get to it in a moment. First, what Labelle did. He hurried to the nearest telegraph office, many kilometers away, to alert the authorities to the disappearance. And this is where the Royal Canadian Mounted Police enters. Now it gets serious. The grave. According to the version told for decades, there was a burial site near the village, and not just any grave. They say Joe Labelle found his vanished friends' empty huts, their abandoned kayaks and rifles, and a single grave, a mound of stones, taken apart and empty. An open grave. Empty. No body. And this is the detail that changes everything, because an animal doesn't explain what was seen. Labelle knew an animal couldn't have been responsible because the stones surrounding the grave were intact. Someone, or something, had carefully removed those stones, taken out the dead, and put the grave back together, in a village where no one living remained. So the question gets darker. It wasn't only the living who vanished, the dead vanished too. Who carries off a corpse from an abandoned village? The mounted police opened a search, and here comes another detail that tightens the tension. According to the account, when they reconstructed the scene, the police discovered the Inuit had been missing for nearly 8 weeks before Labelle's arrival, but they never managed to determine why the entire village had fled the area. And no matter how hard they searched, no matter how thoroughly they hunted for the missing, no one was ever found. No one. Not a body. Not a survivor. Not an explanation. And then the story took an even stranger turn, because decades later, other storytellers added a new ingredient. While examining the incident, it was said that mounted police officers had seen mysterious pulsing lights in the sky over Lake Anjikuni. And pay attention to this, because these weren't the usual northern lights. Unlike the auroras, the lights they observed on the horizon were bluish and pulsing. Empty village, dead dogs on their leashes, an open grave with no body, and blue lights in the Arctic sky. With ingredients like that, what happened next isn't surprising. In the late 20th century, several ufologists speculated that the inhabitants of this village might have been the unwilling victims of one of the largest alien abductions in history. Anjikuni became a legend, a Roswell of the North. But here's where I have to cut the suspense music, because when you really pull the thread, the story starts to unravel. And what's left underneath is, in its own way, just as disturbing. Let's start with the origin. None of this came from a police file. It came from a newspaper. The story first appears in the November 27, 1930 edition of the Danville Bee in Danville, Virginia, written by the journalist Emmett E. Kelleher. That article claimed Joe Labelle had found an empty Eskimo camp with 6 tents, and that 25 men, women, and children had vanished. 25 people. Not 2,000, 6 tents, not a great village. Keep an eye on that number because it's going to grow all on its own. And then almost 30 years of silence, until the book came along that turned a forgotten news item into a myth. The story also appears in Frank Edwards' 1959 book, Stranger Than Science. Who was Edwards? A man who created and hosted a syndicated radio program, Stranger Than Science, about UFOs and other strange phenomena, and who in 1959 published a book with the same title, largely a compilation of his radio broadcasts. And from there, the snowball. Paranormal writers kept expanding the story over the decades, adding UFO sightings, exhumed graves, and a population that grew from 30 to more than 2,000 people across successive versions, from 25 to 2,000. The bodies in the grave, the blue lights, the huts, almost everything that makes this story raise the hair on your neck was added later. It wasn't in the original news report. And the police? Here's the decisive blow. When the story ran through the Canadian papers, the Mounties got questions and answered them. In January 1931, Sergeant J. Nelson, stationed at the pass, filed an internal report that was made public. Nelson wrote that he found no foundation for this story, and he didn't stop there. Nelson reported that Joe Labelle, the informant, had taken out his first hunting license that very season and cast doubt on whether he had ever been in the territories before, as Kelleher's article claimed. He went on to date one of the photos used in the story to 1909 and stated that Kelleher was known for his colorful stories. Translation: the trapper who supposedly knew the village all his life had just picked up his very first license. And one of the photos of the ghost village was more than 20 years old. Today, the mounted police consider the case an urban legend and believe the story took off with Frank Edwards' book. There's even a physical detail that doesn't add up. Researcher Brian Dunning pointed it out. He found Emmett Kelleher's original newspaper article and noted that the lost Inuit boats couldn't have been battered by the waves if the lake had been frozen at the time. In November, in the Arctic, that lake is ice. The account contradicts itself. So we reach the end, and the honest answer. What happened to the people of Lake Anjikuni? Most likely, based on everything verifiable, there never was a village of 25 people that vanished all at once. There was a newspaper article by a reporter with a reputation for embellishing, a newly arrived trapper, an old photo, and a book that 30 years later turned it all into a cosmic mystery. But look at what remains. The truly unsettling thing about Anjikuni isn't a flying saucer. It's watching in real time how 25 becomes 2,000. How a few empty tents fill up with open graves and blue lights. How a story, repeated enough times, stops needing to be true. The people of Lake Anjikuni probably never disappeared. What disappeared was the truth, and no one missed it.